missing like 3 people. All right, and we're back, Mr. Chair, when you're ready.
I now call to order the meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee. I will begin by reading the land acknowledgement statement. On January 18th, 2024, we acknowledge that the sacred land on which Smith Falls is now located has been the site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smith Falls. We are mindful of the broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. I'm John Wanless, Chairman of the Planning Advisory Committee. I will now introduce our committee members. Please raise your hand when I state your name. Councillor Jay Brennan.
Present.
Jacqueline Grimes.
Present.
Stephen McGuire.
Present.
Yvonne Robert.
Present.
Councillor Stephen Robinson.
Present.
To review, committee members are asked to raise their hand and wait until called upon by the chair if they wish to speak. I'll now move to the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Moved by Yvonne, seconded by Stephen. All in favor? Carried. Adoption of minutes. Planning Advisory Committee meeting, December 14th, 2023. Moved by Stephen, seconded by Jay. All in favor? Carried. Disclosure of monetary interest. I'll now open the public meeting portion of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting. Consider revisions to the decisions for consent application B21-01 for 103 Queen Street. This meeting is your opportunity to provide feedback on these applications, and the Planning Advisory Committee welcomes any questions and comments you may have. We encourage you to provide feedback as this public meeting, as the Planning Act rules suggest that the public's ability to voice objections later in the process may be limited if a written or oral comment is not submitted. The Planning Advisory Committee is the decision-making authority for consent applications. The committee will review the application and any comments or concerns from the public to inform their decision. I'll now pass the meeting over to Planner 1, Richard Grant, to report on the proposed revisions to application B21-01. Following your presentation, we will open the floor to comments from the public. Richard.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today we'll be discussing consent application B21-01 for 103 Queen Street for the applicant Chris Pankow. As you can see here is a provided key map of the subject property. In the blue, we have the retained lands, and in the green, we have the proposed severed lands on 103 Queen Street. The application request today came in to revise the original condition that was decided upon on January 2021 for consent application B21-01. The application is requesting a revision of the original decision to reflect the new information based on a preliminary draft survey. They're requesting that the lot measure 421 for the proposed severed lot and measure 625.5 meters for the proposed retained lot. Here we can see the property survey. This property survey is the most recent survey done on the property. In red, we can see the proposed severed lot here. That's in the farther back on Albert Street. And that is proposed severed lot, and in the first half, we can see the proposed retained lot. For the proposed, so in November 2021, when the applicant first brought the consent application forward to the committee, they were proposing that the severed lot measure 555 meters with a 31-meter frontage on Albert Street, and the proposed retained lot measure approximately 784.5 meters with a combined frontage of 558 meters along Queen Street and Albert Street. On the retained lot, there is an existing single attached two-story dwelling and a detached garage. The notice of decision for the original consent application was decided on January 13th, 2022, with a conditional approval. New information from a preliminary property survey revealed that the lot areas of the proposed severed and retained lots were inaccurate. So with the inaccuracy, so there was a greater difference of more than 10%. Now that's something that the municipality feels is, I guess, discretionary. So because the difference was greater than 10%, the decision to come back to the committee to revise the decision was made. So the proposed lot would measure 420 meters and the proposed retained lot would measure 625 meters based on the new information on the survey. At this time, the applicant does not have any proposals to develop the proposed severed lots. The severed lot is only being severed because it is no longer needed. Staff right now are reviewing the proposed severed lot with a potential building envelope to illustrate the viability for development on the proposed severed lot. Here we can see the site sketch that was provided by the applicants. In red, we see the proposed severed lots. Now, there are two building envelopes on this site sketch to illustrate the appropriate setbacks. With the first building envelope measuring 120 meters, we see that there's a 3-meter front yard setback. So this would be what we consider the alternative front yard setback. The minimum front yard setback for the zoning bylaw requires that it would be at least 3 meters for an alternative front yard setback. So if we were maintaining the alternative setback of 3 meters, this would be the size of the building envelope, just to give more clarity. And if you were maintaining a front yard setback of 6 meters, which is normally the required front yard setback for any lots in the R1 zone, this would be the building envelope for the size of the property, which would be 36 meters or 387.5 feet squared. So the reason for showing two building envelopes would be to show what would it take to maintain either the alternative front yard setback of 3 meters or the required setback of 6 meters for the front yard setback. This is just to show the committee what would it look like if you're maintaining either front yard setback, either the alternative 3 meters or the required 6 meters. Now here's a site, these are site visits of the proposed retained lot, and these are the images of the proposed severed lot. Now you can see there is, so where you see the trees in the far back, those are where you would see the property line. So those give you a general idea of just how deep the lot is. And so the lot being more of a trapezoid shape, it gets narrower as you go further towards Albert, and it gets wider as you go closer towards the detached garage that's on Queen Street. So in terms of agency and departments or consultation, we were consulting with Public Works as well as the CBO. Both departments, the CBO as well as Public Works, did not have any comments right now in terms of the application, because to properly evaluate the application, there would need to at least be a development proposal in place on the proposed severed lot. So right now, we are only evaluating in a hypothetical scenario with the building envelope. So these were the planning policies that were reviewed as part of the application, which would be section 4.5 for infrastructure of the official plan, which relates to our infrastructure expectations for any urban development, as well as 6.3 for any sort of residential development. And also the zoning bylaw, where we're looking at the R1 zone with regards to this development, because that's where the property is zoned. As well as the provincial policy statement, which kind of is the overarching policy statement that values. So part of the review, we're looking at conformity with the official planning and zoning bylaw. So since there's no proposed change to the residential land use, it meets the minimum lot size requirements and the building envelope just demonstrates zoning compliance, staff believe that it is in general conformity with the official plan as well as the zoning bylaw. In terms of compatibility with neighboring land uses, again, the residential use of the lot has not changed, and the building envelope conforms zoning compliance with appropriate setbacks. In terms of adequacy of vehicular access or water supply and sewage disposal, there is an existence of water and wastewater service connections on Albert Street. So potentially, if the lot were to be developed, it is possible to find connections along Albert Street. And there is a 32-meter long frontage along Albert Street, so it is possible to create a curb cut to allow for, say, a driveway to be placed on the proposed severed lot. And a grading and drainage plan could be used to determine stormwater management of the site if the lot is ever to be developed. In terms of land use suitability, it kind of encapsulates a lot of other things that were discussed previously in terms of having a viable lot based on the building envelope, the existence of water and wastewater service connections on Albert, and vehicular access on Albert Street based on the 30-meter frontage, and the use of a grading and drainage plan to address any concerns over the slight grade change on the lot. So staff believe that application 2101 broadly meets the intent of the PBS and the town's official plan and can be given favorable consideration by the committee. And as such, the conditions are as follows on this slide here. And that concludes the end of my presentation.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Okay, we have no public, no agent or owners. So committee, any questions from the committee here? Jay?
No questions, just a comment that I support this change, and while there's no plans for development of the severed lot, there's potential there, and that's what we want to see, some intensification, and hopefully in the future there'll be another residence built there. So I support it.
Thanks, Jay.
No.
I support.
With that, looking at the sketch, Richard, where they got the two setbacks. If you went with the actual 6 meter, there's not much of a building envelope there,
Right, it's rather tiny.
like next to nothing.
So there's a caveat here. If we were to approve a building envelope of that size and they're having some sort of proposal, I would recommend that if they're looking to develop the lots, they would be looking at some sort of setback reductions. So minor variance would be the appropriate mechanism to ensure that the setbacks are reduced enough to have that building envelope.
You know, there's two scenarios. We can either go with a reduced frontage, or we could reduce a portion of the rear yard too,
Great.
to accommodate a building envelope in there. But like the other thing I was looking at on here too, I did a survey across the road. There's a duplex across the road. But I wasn't aware, if you look at the survey, it shows a jog in the street at the back of the lot. Like, that really caught my eye.
The jog in the street going,
Well, the Albert Street going out to Phillip Street seems to be wider than what Albert Street coming out onto Queen Street is. And I like I meant to look at the town plan to see if,
the discrepancy, you believe?
well, I didn't think there was any jogging. I know there's a bend in the street coming in off of like,
Well, this is a recent survey, so I'm not quite sure if the surveyor did not account for
well,
that.
I know who the surveyor is. He's relatively new to this area, but, it just,
Are you concerned that the survey may not be entirely accurate?
well, as far as the jog goes, that like,
Do you think that will have implications for the proposed severed size of the lot? Do you think
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
well,
lot's actually
like
smaller?
that's what I'm thinking, like,
Are you more concerned that we would be approving an undersized lot that is smaller than?
but like it's,
The survey is the only information that we generally have to go on in terms of the dimensions of the property. So if there's concerns about the size of the lot, sure where we stand.
like if we approve the size of the lot, then what are they going to have to do? Like, they're going to have to come back and,
If we approve it at 420 and they're proposing to develop the lot, there would need to be a building concept first for us to evaluate the proposal. Because there was no proposal, we weren't able to say whether or not it was entirely viable. It's only hypothetically viable. In the sense that if you maintain the building envelope for, say, 6 meters and it's too small, if there really was a building concept in place, we would be trying to recommend a minor variance to reduce the setback requirements so that, we have something to work with. The reason why we had an alternative setback in place was just to give the committee enough information to consider another possibility that the building envelope could be in fact bigger than, say, what would be required for 6 meters.
what was the 6 meter setback? You've got no building envelope at all.
I just want to clarify one thing. Under the zoning bylaw, without a minor variance, property owners are able to reduce their front yard setback by up to 3 meters if they can demonstrate that the surrounding neighborhood context generally has a reduced setback as well. So the maximum would be a reduction of 3 meters. So the closest they'd be able to get to the front property line without a minor variance application would be that 3 meters demonstrated in Richard's PowerPoint presentation. But there is the ability to have that variance without going through a minor variance process.
And to clarify,
So what would the side yard be on that envelope off the proposed boundary between off the new limit?
are you talking about the front yard or the rear yard?
Or the side yard, the interior yard coming down parallel with the garage? What would that setback be on a building envelope?
Bring it up closer. I'm trying to read it right now. So currently on the sketch here, the interior side yard setback is 1.2 meters.
That's the closest they can get. The zoning bylaw says 3 meters on one side with a minimum 1.2 on the other side for a minimum aggregate between the two of 4.2 meters.
So the interior side yard will not change. That's going to be what it be required. If you're looking for minor variance to make it smaller, that's a different conversation, and that goes as well for the rear yard. If we're looking at reducing any other setbacks, we'd be looking at a minor variance. We can only really be sure what setbacks we're looking to reduce if there is a building concept. So because we're only evaluating on the basis of the size of the envelope, we're giving you only two options in terms of what can be reduced without a minor variance, which would be the front yard. It does make it a little bit complicated because there isn't necessarily a building concept to properly evaluate the concept here. And potentially, we're looking at an undersized lot, but right now, this is the most current information we have in terms of the lot dimensions.
Any comments on that, Jay or Stephen?
Jay has his hand raised, Mr. Chair.
Jay?
Yeah. No, I get that it's going to be a tight fit. However, I'm going to support staff's recommendation and in the report that says that they believe the land proposed for severance is suitable for future residential development. It's going to have to be fit in there, and we can consider it at that time, but I don't think that's really a reason to not approve this at this time. And then, with any luck, there'll be another house there at some point that conforms with our planning principles.
Thank you. Any comments from you guys?
Stephen McGuire. Good.
Stephen?
Yeah, I just have a quick question for so if it is found that the, sorry, getting feedback, that there's a difference in the survey, it would come back to the exact same process that we're doing right now, is that correct?
That's correct.
Because, yeah, so. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it right now, it's just that if it'll be addressed in one way or the other, right? If the document's proven to be different from reality.
If we come back to this point, it would be through the building permit process initially where the applicant would be providing us information for a building concept. And if it shows that for his concept to be fulfilled, it needs a minor variance, or if it comes back that the survey information is correct, then we'd be, yes, back at the same points, seeking a revision of the decision, as well as a condition for the consent to get a minor variance for the building permits that they have in place. So that was what would happen. And that's only an if. Right now, there's no proposal in place. We're only looking at the consent to sever the lot as is.
Sever the lot, yeah.
Mr. Chair, can we just bring up the conditions again? I found that really hard to read.
Yeah, so my apologies. I know that the text is not really big. I don't know how to make it bigger on my end. Maybe the zoom function? Try that. Is that easier? I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
You can drag it a little.
Okay, so yeah, I'll just maneuver that for you. So the conditions are rather similar. Getting a survey within 2 years. The owner shall apply for digital and 2 hard copies of the reference plan for the severed lands, and a digital hard copy of the deed and transfer documents of the severed land, as well as outstanding taxes. So this is boilerplate conditions for a consent.
Go on, yes.
In the previous decision, they talked about the curb cuts as well. Should that be added into the current one?
So the reason why we revised the conditions to remove the requirement for a curb cut, as well as a development agreement to facilitate any sort of servicing connections, is that it places constraints on the developer to achieve those conditions in 2 years if there is not a proposal developed at the time. So we felt it was best to administer those conditions through the building permit stage. So if the applicant was going to develop the lot, then the conditions for a curb cut would be required as a part of the building permit, as well as having those service connections installed for any development that he has. But because we didn't want to put a 2-year timeline on developing a lot where there was nothing in place yet, we decided that it would be best at the building permit stage when the applicant would be ready.
Thank you.
Stephen?
Well, based on the feedback, I'm going to support staff recommendation because we can address this if they decide to come forward with a building proposal. So for the severance, I'll support it.
Okay, a decision for the proposed revisions for the approval of the consent application B21-01. If the committee is ready to do so, I will now entertain a motion. Moved by Yvonne, seconded by Stephen. All in favor? Carried. Planning process for application 21-01. Anyone requiring further notice regarding the application is asked to leave their full name, mailing, or email address on the sign-in sheet located at the table at the door. If you have any questions, application to a process, I invite you to get in touch with the planning clerk. This concludes the public meeting portion of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting. We will now move on to the next item on our agenda. Priority issues, we have none. Project updates, request for proposals for development -24-01 official plan update.
That's me, Mr. Chair. Sorry. So the request for proposal to procure the services for the official plan update was launched on January 16th, 2024. Given the large scope of the proposal or the project, which I understand this committee's maybe heard a little bit from Carl. So how we've been directed from council is that there is a commercial sector analysis, a transportation master plan, and what's the other one? Oh, a housing needs study that's being built in as a stepping stone to an official plan update. So just due to the large scope of the project, interested parties do have until March 12th, 2024 to submit their proposals. So it likely won't be awarded until the spring, but PAC will be kept updated on that process as they will be involved. Oh, and one more thing on that. Next month, we're bringing forward essentially an agenda item looking for this committee to appoint one member as part of the steering committee for that project. If you would like to put some thought into that until our meeting next month, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Mary. Next meeting, Planning Advisory Committee meeting, February 8th, 2024. Can I have a motion for adjournment? Moved by Jacqueline.
Okay.
Jay and Stephen, can I use your electronic signatures for the?
Yes, you can.
That's good to know.